Hey there, everyone. It's Camber here with the YoPro. I am here today with Tim Nowak, 37-year-old founder and CEO of Emergency Medical Solutions. He is currently in Florida at this time, but says his home base is Wisconsin. So we'll talk more about that in a second. And I always like to mention how we get connected to our interviews. And so Ryan Thorne, who we heard from last year back in 2020, connected us with Tim. And Tim just mentioned to me before the interview that they met over LinkedIn. So always love to hear that. The power of connection, just being in the same industry, they found each other that way and have, established a relationship through that. So I think that's a great way to start the interview. So Tim, thanks so much for being here. Give us a brief background on yourself. Just go ahead and get started.
Hey, Camber. No, thanks for the introduction and thanks for the opportunity here. It's a great chance to connect and network, like you mentioned. I'm Tim Nowak. I'm the founder and CEO of Emergency Medical Solutions. My background is in the emergency services industry, primarily EMS, ambulance services, and the fire service. So I started my career in Wisconsin as a firefighter paramedic. Did a lot of education and training in the meantime, and eventually developed my own training and consulting company, doing freelance education. And the company's kind of morphed over the years to do a number of other opportunities. But now I'm into a lot of like freelance writing, some social media influencing, and really anything that's EMS related. I kind of have my hand into it somehow, one way or another. But it's at least brought me from Wisconsin to Colorado, working with different opportunities, over here to Florida with the senior management position. And actually now I'm kind of scaling back a little bit and transitioning back over to Wisconsin, which I call home. And it seems crazy, going from, frigid Wisconsin to Colorado, which is kind of like wonderful weather, to Florida, which is the ideal state for some people, but it's misery for me. I can't do
Yeah.
it. And then back to Wisconsin, which to me is home. So
Right.
all over the place.
Yeah, you really have been. So let's start by going all the way back to, your early part of your career. Young professional, the definition of young professional is anyone between the ages of 21 and 39 years old. So that's a really long, wide space where you can be a young professional. And obviously you're in very different career, like you're in a very different stage than you were when you were 21 years old.
Mhm.
So let's go back from the very beginning, and obviously not going year by year here, but kind of touch on those big milestones for you, like really what stood out in that career path from 21 to now 37.
Yeah, and a couple of years before that, I was fortunate where I knew what I wanted to do as far as a career, getting involved in the fire service and EMS industry in high school. So from there, I really just went into it all in.
Mhm.
Got involved in programs right in high school. Worked on college credits. Was able to walk into my associate degree program with about 30% of it done,
Wow.
and get done with a 2-year program in just over a year and a half.
Mhm.
Walk right into my dream job at the time, which is unique. I mean, usually positions like that, there were 750 applicants for my position, which was hiring 7, and I
Mhm.
was fortunate to be one of the 7.
Mhm.
So it started early, but
Yeah.
from there, I was able to transition through, kind of the ranks of the industry. And what really started it, at least kind of my company and getting it going, was a little bit of a need for disruption and change. My industry is kind of traditionally focused and based, and the way that we have always done things is just the easiest way to keep going.
Mhm.
And agencies that I was doing training with, wanted something different, and regulations were changing to allow difference, but the institutions weren't doing it. So I took a risk. I broke away from what was traditional. Started my own company. Probably burned some bridges in the meantime, but started my own company and started to tailor, to what the market wanted,
Mhm.
and it kind of went from there.
Yeah.
And I've been able to at least move around and ebb and flow with the industry, and change some of my practices in between there. But that's kind of like the start of it, and at least what seems to be the switching changing point.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things I want to kind of pick apart from there. The first being just a personal note. I have a cousin who is, doing, I guess he knew early on that this was, somewhat what he wanted to do. And so like you, He got those classes in before he even got to college, which I think is huge if you can do that. And of course, not everyone has the luxury of doing that. But I think that's an important point. So thank you for bringing that up. The second thing that you mentioned was, you saw a need in the market. And I think for any entrepreneur, that is key, figuring out where there's a gap, where there's a hole, and how you can be that solution to the problem. So I think that's another, great point. For people who are interested in this space, this industry, what are some skill sets that you believe you have that would be helpful for others who might be interested in this space to, kind of take note of and maybe sharpen their tools a little bit?
Yeah, getting into the emergency services industry, whether it's police, fire, EMS, ambulance service, I think it's a little bit different than those that traditionally want to go like in the healthcare route, like in the hospital setting, like a nurse.
Mhm.
We're a different breed of people, and I'm sure a nurse would agree with that, and so would a paramedic or a firefighter. So we're a little bit different and kind of messed up on our own unique way. But certainly there are technical hands-on skills, but also soft skills
Mhm.
that are just hard to find. And
Right.
I think a lot of agencies and departments are appreciative of the soft skills and being able to relay that we are indeed taking care of people and families, and being able to portray that and communicate that, I think, is an important thing.
Mhm.
But certainly being able to physically do whatever the job is a big part of it.
Absolutely. And you did mention the phrase messed up in their own sort of way. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's unique where in many situations, people call for help, or they, hit the red button and then they run away.
Mhm.
Yet we're the crazy ones that are running toward the problem. Most intuition would say house is on fire, leave house. Whereas we're crazy enough to say house is on fire, awesome, I'm going in.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a little bit messed up.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for expanding on that a little
Yeah,
bit. Uh,
in a healthy, safe, appropriate way. But yeah,
yes.
it's still unique.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Um, Tell us about your day to day. What do you do now? When you're in Florida, what does your day to day look like as the founder and CEO?
Yeah, so right now I'm transparently I'm in kind of a transition point. I left my full-time job,
Mhm.
which is just a position that was sold to me as something great and wonderful,
Mhm.
and it was worth an 1,800-mile move.
Mhm.
But after getting here, it was not that. So
Mhm.
that is certainly the risk of moving up in the world,
Mhm.
or moving into management. Is there are times where you're going to hit the jackpot,
Yeah.
and there are times where you were going to flop.
Mhm.
This one was a flop.
Yeah.
So back to the drawing board.
Mhm.
And that's unfortunate, when you have a family and
Yeah.
a mortgage and all that stuff to kind of work off of. Right now, though, focusing on my company, my goal over the next year is to really just to stay remote. I've got another child coming on the way, so that adds into the equation. Um, but it also opens up the opportunity and kind of makes me realize how much I have been away from home and
Mhm.
focusing on career so much that it's time to kind of reshift priorities and focus on what I've missed.
Yeah.
So my goal is to be home. So a lot of my day right now is continuing with the freelance work that I have already established, but then also hustling and trying to get more,
Mhm.
or find new opportunities.
Mhm.
And with more time, I'm able to now actually capitalize on some of the opportunities that I had to pass up before,
Mhm.
because of the newfound time. So it's unique, it's vulnerable, but it's also I'm optimistic about what is next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wonderful. One, thank you for being so open about all of that because I think I'm really very moved by your comparison. Sometimes with the risk of management comes you're either going to hit the jackpot or you're going to flop, and of course that won't happen in your early career because you're likely not moving into management in your first few years out of school. And so just like I tell people now in the audience for the Yo Pro No that you likely won't love your first job. You likely might not love your fifth job. You know what I mean? Like it just it is all so situational. And I think companies just unfortunately don't do a very good job of communicating the expectations, the culture. I think
Hmm.
that's probably the biggest thing. I don't know what specifically it was that about your, your role, but I really, really applaud you for, taking this next step and hustling and, recognizing what you want and what you need because, family is also very important. It's not something I talk much about with YoPro No, not because, I'm averse to it. It's just, this is a professional platform. However, we are, I'm wrapping up here because I want to ask you another question. But family is very important in many young professionals' lives. So can you talk a little bit more about that piece and, how big is your family? How have you been able to, set some boundaries?
Yeah, and what makes my situation, or at least my, speaking on my industry, excuse me, what makes my situation unique is when I was more of a firefighter paramedic and working in that clinical field role, my hours were a 24-hour schedule. So, essentially working 10 or so days a month, but 24 hours, and sometimes, being awake and functioning for full 24. The longest I've ever been awake and functioning was 36 hours straight. So, not saying that's safe or wonderful, but that's the reality. So going from that type of schedule to, traditional management days, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or, pretty much 7 until 5 or 7 to 7, 60 hours a week. Um, that type of opportunity changes things, changes the dynamic. And with families, I mean, I'm fortunate where, the goal, the plan with my wife was for her to always stay home. So I've always had the mentality that I would rather work 5 jobs than have her work one.
Yeah.
And we're on board with that. So between her, my daughter who's 7, and then a new one on the way pretty soon here, plus some dogs running around the house.
Do you know if it's a boy or girl coming?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll find out the day of.
Oh, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's unique, and having the support where, she has been willing to, all right, let's pack up and let's go to Colorado. This sounds pretty cool. Or, Colorado was a great job. And the only reason I left there was to move up. So that pursuit of moving up is consuming. It really is. And if you don't have a family to support your professional sense, you've got to give or take from one or the other. And having said that too, I've learned that it's not possible or not as probable to be successful at both. I am, admittedly so. I am not the parent that I would like to be, or the father that I would like to be. I'm not saying I'm a bad parent, but I'm not as great as I would like to be
Mhm.
because of my pursuit of up. And having spent the last year in a crappy place has made me realize that I want to focus on what is better and good, and I can still do that professionally, working from home, and the opportunities there. So
Yeah.
you've got to be creative, and you've got to be willing to take some chances and do some things different. But that's life. That's grown up problems.
Right. No, I think very well said. And again, thanks for being so open with that.
Hmm.
Um, I was recently told, and it's something I've heard time and time again, but it's just more recently, it's been kind of at the forefront of my mind. But like everything you do is really a risk.
Oh
And
yeah.
so you just said that. And even like choosing to be remote, to be, with your family, that's a risk in a way.
Hmm.
And I think your point about it's hard to be successful at both um, is probably something that a lot of people can resonate with. So all very good points. I am mindful of our time, so I do want to wrap up with a few final questions. What what would you tell yourself, looking back when you first got into the industry? What would you tell yourself now?
Um, that's a hard question. Um, because I by no means have any regrets of any move I've made in the past, whether it was successful or unsuccessful or detrimental or extremely profound. I have absolutely failed, and I have absolutely succeeded here and there. So I think that the moves themselves have created who I am, and made me learn the lessons, whether it's the easy way or the hard way. Um, so I guess I would tell myself, keep going. There are probably some times where I probably shouldn't have been as bold or loud spoken as I was, but at the same time, I'm kind of known as a disruptor in the industry, I think. So it is what it is. That's my characteristic. That's also my flaw. So I would say keep going,
And you
but
don't know.
certainly,
You don't know until you
yeah.
try. I mean, so one bold move,
hmm
you don't know until you do it.
yeah. Keep going, keep connecting, and certainly too, make smart, objective financial decisions so that you can afford to succeed. You can afford to fail.
Yeah, love that. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time today. Any last minute words of advice or any other parting thoughts you want to leave with this audience?
Yeah, nothing crazy offhand, but it's all about opportunity, and you don't know what's going to pop up next. You don't know where it's going to come from. I would have never expected going from Wisconsin to Colorado, then to Florida, and then eventually just making a triangle back to Wisconsin, literally in the back in the same place. So it was risky making the first move. Then it was kind of fun making the next move. Even going from here, now I grew up in a family in a setting where you didn't leave literally 5 miles from where you started. So going across the country 1,600 then 1,800 miles one way and the other way, it's not easy.
Right.
um, but it's been worth it. And
Yeah.
you can always go back to where you came from.
Right.
Maybe not the same setting, but there are ways.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great way to end the interview, Tim. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.